Have you ever had someone look you dead in the eye and try to convince you that your own property doesn't actually belong to you? Well, that's exactly what happened to me. And trust me, you'll want to hear how it all unfolded. Because when Karen decided to claim my private driveway as community property, she didn't just pick the wrong battle, she picked the wrong person entirely. It all started on a bright Saturday morning. I had just finished washing my truck and parked it neatly in my driveway, proud of how spotless it looked. That's when Karen, my next-door neighbor, strutted over with the confidence of someone who thought she ran the entire neighborhood. She had her sunglasses on, clipboard in hand, because of course she did, and that unmistakable expression that screamed trouble incoming. "Excuse me," she said, arms folded. "We need to talk about the driveway situation." I raised an eyebrow. "The driveway situation?" She nodded as if she were doing me a favor. "Yes, your driveway isn't technically yours. It's community property, which means everyone in the neighborhood should have equal rights to use it." I nearly choked on my coffee. "What are you talking about? I own this house. The deed clearly shows the driveway is mine." But Karen wasn't having it. She gave me this smug smile that said she thought she had already won. "Actually," she continued, "several of us in the neighborhood have been discussing it, and we've decided that your driveway should be open for community use. It's unfair for you to hog all that space." Now, let me be clear. My driveway isn't some massive parking lot. It's a single-car driveway, barely enough space for my truck. The idea that it should be shared with the entire block was absurd. I laughed, thinking this was a joke. But Karen's glare told me she was dead serious. She even pulled out a printed sheet from her clipboard, some community guidelines she had typed up herself, trying to pass them off as official documents. "Starting next week," she declared, "neighbors will be allowed to park in your driveway whenever necessary. Consider this notice." That's when I realized Karen wasn't just being nosy. She was planning a full-blown takeover of my property. And while most people might have backed down to avoid drama, I wasn't about to let her rewrite the rules of ownership. What Karen didn't know was that I had every receipt, every document, and every legal right on my side. And if she wanted a war over my driveway, well, she was about to get one. If you thought Karen would back down after I laughed in her face, think again. This was only the beginning, and she was just warming up. The very next morning, I walked outside to find a silver sedan parked halfway across my driveway. It wasn't mine. I looked around, and who else but Karen came strolling down the sidewalk with her dog, pretending like nothing was wrong. "Karen," I called out, pointing to the car. "Is this yours?" She gave me that fake, innocent look. "Oh no, that's Linda's. She's visiting her daughter, and since you weren't using the driveway, I told her she could park there." I felt my blood pressure spike. "You told her she could park in my driveway?" Karen crossed her arms. "Yes, like I said, community property. You weren't using it, so there's no problem." That was the moment I realized Karen wasn't just trying to convince me, she was actively enforcing her own imaginary rules. She wasn't bluffing. She was building her little empire, and my driveway was the crown jewel. So, I did what any sane homeowner would do. I called the tow company. When the driver arrived and started hooking the sedan to his truck, Karen came running across the yard, yelling like I had just set her house on fire. "You can't do that!" "This is harassment," she screamed. The tow driver just shrugged and said, "Ma'am, this vehicle is parked on private property. He has every right to have it removed." Karen's jaw dropped. She turned on me like I was the villain. "This isn't over!" she snapped. "You'll regret this." The car was gone within minutes, and I thought maybe, just maybe, that would be the end of it. But I underestimated just how stubborn Karen could be. The following week, she started a petition. Yes, a real petition, going door to door with that same clipboard, trying to get neighbors to sign her so-called driveway fairness initiative. I caught wind of it when my neighbor, Mark, came over and said, "Hey, just so you know, Karen's been asking people to support her plan to make your driveway open access." I didn't sign it, but she's pretty determined. That's when I knew Karen wasn't going to stop with parking cars. She was trying to gather an army. And the scariest part? A couple of neighbors actually agreed with her. But what Karen didn't realize was that her little campaign was about to backfire in the biggest way possible. Because when she pushed things too far, she accidentally handed me all the leverage. I needed to put her in her place, permanently. By this point, Karen's obsession with my driveway had taken on a life of its own. Every evening, I'd see her pacing up and down the street, clipboard in hand, knocking on doors like some self-appointed official. She'd wave her papers in the air, ranting about fair access and community spirit. At first, I ignored it. But then one afternoon, I overheard her at my next-door neighbor's porch. She was saying loud enough for me to hear, "See, it's not fair for one person to monopolize that driveway. It should benefit everyone." If we all sign, the homeowner will have no choice but to comply. I almost dropped my rake. No choice but to comply? That's when I knew Karen wasn't just delusional. She was dangerous. A few days later, a folded piece of paper showed up in my mailbox. No envelope, no stamp, just a crumpled petition. At the top, in bold, it read, Community Property Agreement, Shared Driveway Use. I scanned down the page and nearly laughed out loud. Out of the 20-something houses in the neighborhood, Karen had managed to get 5 signatures. And the best part? 2 of them were completely illegible scribbles, probably made up to pattern numbers. But instead of throwing it away, I kept it, because right there at the bottom, she had signed her full name, and that was about to become very important. Later that week, Karen marched up to me like a queen presenting her decree. Here, she said, shoving another copy of the petition into my hands. The community has spoken. You'll need to make your driveway available for use starting next month. I grinned. Karen, do you even realize what you've just done? She frowned. What are you talking about? I held up the petition. By distributing this and telling people I have to comply, you're fabricating rules that don't exist. That's harassment. And since you've signed your name to it, you've left a paper trail. For the first time, Karen's confidence wavered. Her lips tightened, and that smug smile of hers flickered. You're bluffing, she muttered. But I wasn't. I'd already spoken with a lawyer friend, who confirmed exactly what I suspected. Karen's little campaign wasn't just annoying. It could be considered a form of defamation and harassment. And if she thought she could bully me into giving up my driveway, she was about to learn what happens when you try to play legal games without knowing the rules. Because I was preparing to hit her with a reality check so big, it would shut her down for good. By the time Karen shoved that petition in my face, I had already set my plan into motion. You see, Karen thought she was running some kind of neighborhood democracy. But the reality was, property law doesn't bend just because one person with a clipboard says so. The very next day, I gathered every deed, survey, and document related to my house. I wanted absolute proof that the driveway was mine and mine alone. I even called the county office to double-check property lines. Sure enough, my driveway was 100% within my lot. There was no shared space, no community property, no gray area whatsoever. Armed with facts, I decided it was time to flip the script. When I saw Karen strutting down the street again, pestering neighbors with her petition, I walked straight over with a folder in hand. Karen, I said calmly, we need to talk. She rolled her eyes. Unless you're ready to agree to community use of the driveway, I don't want to hear it. I opened the folder and handed her a copy of my property deed. This says otherwise. Legally, the driveway belongs to me. And your petition? Completely meaningless. She glanced at the paper, scoffed, and tried to wave it off. That doesn't change the fact that neighbors support me. I smirked. Actually, it changes everything. Because here's the thing. By distributing this petition and claiming, I have no choice but to comply, you're spreading false information. That's harassment. My lawyer says if I want, I can take this to court. For once, Karen didn't have a comeback. Her face went pale, and I could see her calculating the consequences. But I wasn't done yet. I held up the petition she signed. This little document, it's proof. You've put your name on it, which means you can't pretend this was all a misunderstanding. A few neighbors who had gathered nearby were watching closely, and that's when I played my final card. In fact, I said loudly enough for everyone to hear, if Karen continues to trespass on my property or encourage others to, I'll have no choice but to file an official harassment complaint, which means fines, possible legal action, and a permanent record. Karen's eyes darted around, realizing the audience wasn't on her side anymore. A few neighbors who had signed the petition looked uncomfortable, clearly regretting it. Karen finally muttered, "This isn't over." But her voice lacked the fire it once had. She turned and stormed off, clutching her clipboard like a shield. What she didn't know was that things were about to be over. Just not in the way she thought. Because when she made her final desperate move, it backfired in a way that even I couldn't have predicted. After our confrontation in front of the neighbors, I thought Karen might finally crawl back into her corner. But if there's one thing you should know about Karen, it's this. She doesn't give up when she's wrong. She doubles down. 2 days later, I woke up to the sound of voices outside my window. When I peeked out, I nearly laughed. Karen had called what she proudly referred to as a community meeting. Right there at the edge of my driveway, she dragged out lawn chairs, set up a folding table, and was trying to convince people that if they all stood together, they could overrule property deeds. I walked out calmly, coffee mug in hand. "Morning, everyone," I said, waving to the small crowd. "Enjoying your illegal gathering on my driveway?" Karen shot up from her chair, red-faced. "This is a community meeting, and you can't stop us. The driveway belongs to all of us." That's when I pulled out my phone. "Funny you should say that," I replied, "because I already spoke with the police about this nonsense. They're very interested in hearing how you've been trespassing on private property, and right on cue, as if the universe itself wanted Karen to lose. An officer's patrol car rolled up. Apparently, one of the neighbors had already called about the disturbance. The officer stepped out, looked at Karen's little setup, then at me. "Sir, is this your property?" I handed him a copy of my deed. "Yes, officer. 100% mine. Karen here seems to think otherwise." The officer turned to Karen, who was now fidgeting with her clipboard. "Ma'am, you can't hold a meeting on someone else's property without permission. That's trespassing. Pack it up." Karen sputtered. But the petition." The officer cut her off. "A petition doesn't override a deed. That's not how the law works. If you keep this up, you could be facing a citation, or worse." The neighbors, who had come out of curiosity more than support, began snickering. One even whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Guess the queen lost her kingdom." Red-faced and furious, Karen scrambled to fold up her table and snatch her chairs, all while muttering about how unfair it was. She wouldn't meet my eyes as she stormed off down the street, dragging her clipboard like a defeated soldier retreating from battle. That was the last time Karen ever brought up my driveway. In fact, for weeks afterward, she barely left her house. Word spread fast about how she'd been shut down by the police, and her little reputation as the neighborhood enforcer crumbled overnight. As for me, I enjoyed every peaceful morning in my driveway, parking my truck exactly where it belonged, on my property. Sometimes, victory tastes sweeter than coffee. If you enjoyed watching Karen's driveway takeover blow up in her face, don't forget to like this video, drop a comment sharing your thoughts, and of course subscribe for more videos. Until next time, keep standing your ground and never let a Karen claim your driveway.